Welcome to the Jake Turner Podcast, where we share tools to win in life, health, and business. I'm Jake Turner. I have my doctorate in nurse anesthesia, and I'm a certified life coach. Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Spiros Lazarou, a board-certified plastic surgeon who's built his career on helping people feel like the best version of themselves. He's seen everything from life-changing reconstructions to the darker side of perfection culture. We're talking about beauty, confidence, faith, and the pressure of image in today's world. And I promise this one's going to make you see the human side of plastic surgery. Please welcome Dr. Spiros Lazarou.
Thank you very much, Jake.
God, I got your name right. I feel like all the practice is really paying off. Why do you think people care so much about how they look?
There are many places we could start this conversation at, because the human person is not a simple thing. There's the good reason, and then there's the real reason. And I don't know how many people know the real reason that motivates them, because I don't know that they take enough time to think about why they do what they do or want what they want. Now,
you're from Greece.
Actually, I'm from D.C.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, just for like the listeners know that. But do you feel like there's a big difference between the Greek culture and the American culture when it comes to that, as far as being focused on ourselves and love?
Well, as cultures are being homogenized, the differences are diminishing, but there are still energies and practices and conceptions of things deep within the culture that, despite some generations of secularization and materialism, still maintain a difference between the cultures. For example, in the West, spirituality is obedience. It's law. It's observing rules and regulations. In the East, especially among Greeks, spirituality is the person in front of you. Laws and rules are secondary. There's an inner law, personal law, that comes from a certain thousands of years of tradition that places the person in front of you above any other external law. So that's why you have a very chaotic situation in Greece. Now, as the spiritual roots, as, say, Christendom in the West decays, in the conscience of the Westerner, you still have this obedience to law, this law, and the guilt it produces when you violate your rules and ethics and laws. In the Greek mind, as the spiritual roots of this emphasis on the person in front of you, as those spiritual roots decay, because of the de-emphasis and less significance of laws and obedience, you have a chaotic situation, right? So liberty creates naturally this state of chaos, as you experienced going down to Athens or to any Greek village.
There is definitely some chaos, especially driving around in Greece. I've never experienced, like, everyone drives like they're racing. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no coasting. It's full gas, full brake all the time. Like any time of day. It's wild. And I thought like Nashville traffic was pretty bad. Like, I don't know what you think of and what it compares to Nashville, but there's definitely some chaos, at least when it comes to the highway. But maybe that comes from people as a person themselves, because they're the one driving the car. So
yeah, I mean, regardless of the traffic, if the roads don't match the population and its movements and the way the economy is set up, a basic politeness and patience is in order,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And people are in such a treadmill of running that is lost.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I heard something interesting when I was traveling. I decided to get my motorcycle license, and one thing that they said in the class was how you drive, in this case the motorcycle, but even a car or anything, is a direct reflection of who you are as a person. And I thought that was interesting. It's when it comes to your patience or your anger or your discipline. And I think that's true because when I'm on the highway, I want to go as fast as possible. However, it's harder, and I usually choose to just hit cruise and just relax. I don't go exactly, the speed limit, because that can be dangerous, on the highway going exactly. You don't want to go with the flow of traffic. But for the most part, if you're going to get anywhere on time, you're usually going to leave early. You can't just catch up, which I think a lot of people think they can do. I'll just go 20 miles over the speed limit and I'll get there in time, which usually I feel like that person's late.
I think what you're saying is very accurate. There's definitely a dark side of me that comes out when I drive, and that masks a lot of things that should be uncovered and dealt with.
Well, at least you can be admitting and self-aware of that. I think some people think like, oh, I'm totally disconnected from that part of myself, or would deny it.
Well, what you just said brings us back to the question you raised, the good reason and the real reason. I think we lack self-awareness. St. John Chrysostom said, "He who knows himself knows all things." Of course, he was simply quoting ancient Greek pre-Christian sages, but that's very true. And if you have no knowledge of yourself, you cannot control yourself. And if you cannot control yourself, somebody else controls you. You may not realize it. And that's why propaganda and advertising work. Because there's a void, and the void is self-knowledge. And what we don't want to face is our dark side. We have a difficult time with looking at ourselves, looking at our vanities, our pride, our ego, our lusts.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because our conscience can't bear those things, and they remind us of the reality of our decay and impending death, because all of that is tied up to death, with our fear of death. And there's a vicious cycle. The reality of death causes a fear, which makes us proud to cover up, and that pride brings out all kinds of other passions. It's hard to coach somebody, for example, without you having an awareness of the dark side of our nature.
Yeah, or our fears. And anger usually is a secondary emotion to fear, which most people don't realize, which I have a lot of empathy or non-judgment for people when they have a lot of anger, because usually it's coming from some sort of fear or thoughts of lack people have.
Well, when you have a knowledge of yourself, it's hard to be judgmental to somebody else. We all participate in the same sicknesses.
It's true.
Our degrees may vary, and the degree of our effort to get out of these things may vary.
True.
But we all participate as humans in the same thing. So it's hard. I can't judge a patient because he comes with a cancer, or somebody ran into him on the street.
How dare you have cancer?
Right. I mean, think about it. This moralistic approach to these things is what is the source of a lot of stress. Guilt. Guilt is an evil energy. It doesn't come from God. It's an evil energy. So it's because of a moralistic way of understanding things, rather than seeing that I have a condition that we all participate in. We all share in this human condition. And seeing it as a sickness that I do need a guide to help me, like I go to a doctor, right? I go to a doctor, I see cancer. I might not be responsible for my cancer. I may not be responsible for my lusts or vanities or various other weaknesses. The environment participated in shaping these. In shaping them, not the cause of them. That's crucial. Okay? The cause is already inside of me, in that I wear this body of death and the decay it caused. That's why simply understanding your past, when you go to do psychoanalysis or something, and you can make the connections of your present behavior with the environment you were in, your father, your mother, that has some importance. But your parents simply shaped the response of the passions are already inside of you. That's crucial to make that difference. Otherwise, you're blaming your past, and there's no hope for your future.
Yeah.
You can't change your past.
Yeah, especially when you apply that to a relationship. One of my favorite quotes related to that is, making someone of the present pay for your past equals no future.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, wonderful.
Oh, there's something else I was going to say about that. Oh, one doctor I did research with in college, one of his favorite quotes, and I like it too, is your biography defines your biology. And what he meant by that is people who have a rough past, played sports, had a tough environment growing up in their household, had a lot more health problems than people who live a more boring life, didn't do much. And I thought that was really interesting because that ties in a lot with what you're saying. Our environment shapes who we are as a person, and then eventually comes right over in your biology.
Well, yeah, our biology is definitely affected by our environment. Even what we feel affects our biology.
Yeah, or what we think about.
What we think about, sure. See, that's part of the problem with modern science and medicine. It's very reductive. We know more and more about less and less. Pretty soon we'll know everything about nothing. We disintegrate the ecosystem of the human person into organs. What we can't measure, we don't even count. So that what we would call the soul, or that the sum total of the parts, which is this energy that really shapes you, we don't even include that. And even the organs now are disintegrated into parts. You have one specialist who unplugs the heart, the vessels in the heart, by putting tubes in there, another specialist by moving the vessels around, another specialist deals with arrhythmia. This is a complete disintegration of the human person. This reduction, this analysis without synthesis, is not leading us to health. It's leading us to a business model I refer to as symptom management. And we have phenomenal technology, as you know, if your life is threatened, to save you, but just to bring you back. You'd think on the surface, well, the surgeon is less prone to that. He's not managing hypertension and neuroses and psychoses and arrhythmias and whatever. No, the surgeon is involved in that too. When a patient comes to me for what would be an aesthetic, what we would call purely aesthetic. I don't like all of plastic surgery in a sense because it works on the surface of things, is concerned with beauty, right? But there is a difference between the child who's born with a cleft lip, the patient who just had a huge facial fracture in an accident, and the 40, 50, 60-year-old woman who is concerned about the wrinkles that she sees or the lines on her face. Just like my whole body has value, but the value of my pinky is not the same as the value of my heart. I'm obviously going to evaluate the significance of those differently, right?
Yeah.
So everything involves beauty. The question really is what are your motivations? What's moving you to do what you want to do? And if I don't address those and help that patient come to some modicum of self-awareness, then really I'm just taking advantage of her vanity or whatever she thinks is important reason for her to do this. Okay, so that's a cultural thing again. That takes me back to the significance of law. Efficiency, technique, technology, all of these are vital and central to current American culture. It's materialistic thinking. Greek culture, although most Greeks may today also be secular and materialistic, you can't remove 2,000 years of Christianity that easily. So there's still a culture that emphasizes the human person. So things move at a slower pace. So money is a significant aspect of healthcare. I think, for example, to address your question in a very personal way, here it's very easy for the physician and the patient to be smiley and happy because the patient is then going to go to the secretary and give their insurance information. You don't talk money with a doctor. In Greece, it's very different. It's cash. They're going to ask me, Doc, what does this cost? And that's where the rubber meets the road. Okay? Because here now, how am I going to use this money transaction in a way that's not destructive of truth, beauty, and goodness? Because money is a mask that perverts relationships.
In what way?
Well, it comes between the logical relationship between two people and attempts to evaluate it, right? Money is not just a means of exchange. Money is a system of values that I've come up in my head, whether the price of something is determined by a Politburo, a few people, a la communism, or by supposedly the free market. What binds the two is money, this system of values that comes from either the imagination of a few or the imagination of many. And I impose that system as one evaluative means, and that's its price. And I impose that to objectify creation so that I can subjugate and control it. See, money is a complicated thing. It's not just a simple means of exchange. It's a system of values that comes from my imagination. And its purpose is to disintegrate, to objectify, and to control. That's the deeper purpose. That's the real reason, not the good reason that we give, to make exchange. Okay, so money corrupts relations. The moment I have to set a price on something, like operating on your child, you're an employee, you can barely make ends meet, and you're coming to me with your child who's got a problem, and I have to quote you a price. You can't even meet your monthly needs, right? So how do I personally, what's my technique? How do I go about this? So as a rule, I'm trying to individualize. I'm trying to be so attentive and vigilant to this patient to see beyond the surface of things. I want to see if I can, with an accumulated experience, see what's in their heart to the extent that I can, very carefully, okay? So but typically what I'll say is, on the other hand, as a modern person, they evaluate things with money too. They've been taught that. Oh, high price means big value, Swarovski.
Right, yeah.
Low price means I must not be getting, the stock must not be very good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way I've balanced that in my practice in Greece is, this is the cost, this is my fee. It's up here. But you're going to give me what you can. That's in a nutshell. Now, typically, there's maybe, in every individual case, there may be more discussion. But that's it in a nutshell. So at the end of I don't know who's paid me at the end of the month. I mean, I have to cut receipts, so obviously they pay me, cut receipts, but it doesn't matter to me. What I look at the end of the month, if I covered my bills, and typically I have something left over. I managed to educate my kids, right? So, and I live definitely above average.
Yeah.
So the Lord has more than amply provided for me. But this is in a kind of grossly in a nutshell how I kind of approach. So I have, people who pay me what I asked for, all the way to the other end, where they don't pay me anything. They say, Doc, I can't, or this is what I have. There's a few patients at the end of the day that I'll even cover their hospital costs, but we know it from the beginning. They're honorable. They make it clear from the beginning. I've had, I don't know, in 30 plus years of practice in Greece, maybe I can think of 2 or 3 patients that stiffed me, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Where I knew they, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I don't,
I think you made an interesting point about value, because say if there was an operation you typically did that cost $10,000, and then to any other doctor, a patient goes to them, every doctor's quoting them $10,000. And if they came to you, even though you were the most skilled surgeon, and you were charging $500, they might be like, oh, is he even that good? He's only charging $500. And that applies to coaching as well. If I am charging someone $20 an hour for me to be their coach, they may not necessarily take my advice or find what I'm saying helpful, which ironically, there's a point to it, of course, but charging more, there's more perceived value. Again, I think it has a lot to do with how our minds work, but again, being self-aware of that and wanting to help that person and the most people that I can, that has to change.
Well, a crucial thing is for me, not to be bound up and tied to money. See, that's the crucial thing, because if I am, then that will affect how my motivation toward the patient and how I'm motivated. If I've settled the money issue, which I don't think any of our passions are tendency to greed or want more is ever settled. It requires continuous spiritual vigilance, all right, and always coming back and reassessing yourself and motives, right? I think that's true. Once you may be done with a patient, but it's with someone you're coaching, but it's not over. You've given him principles to guide him, because he may stumble tomorrow again, right?
Correct.
So that goes for me too. Tomorrow I may be tempted by the desire to have a better car. I don't know, whatever. A
right.
wife who's pressing for something,
Yeah.
Oh, that's real, right?
Yeah.
So it's crucial to have settled your relationship to material things, to your wants and desires, to limit those temptations, so you're free from that bondage to money that then can pervert your relationship.
Yeah, because at a certain point, like I have a nice truck, blessed. What then? A nicer truck, And
There's no end to that.
And then a nicer truck than that. I mean, you can spend as much as you want on a truck or a car or insert whatever thing you want to buy next. The true freedom comes when, like you said, you can dissociate yourself from that and saying, that's enough. At a certain point where you truly are content, and that is enough. I think you can want that, but it's not that need. I'm not content. I'm not totally happy, 100% satisfied until I have that thing.
Right. So now you're talking about idols. See, you're raising very important things. What is the source ultimately of my joy? If it's not your creator, then you've got idols, and those idols never satisfy in the end. You can see this in plastic surgery. You've got the car. You're very happy with your new truck. A couple of years pass, and you get the itch for something bigger and better, like you said. Okay. Well, plastic surgery is
bigger wheels.
A patient who has aesthetic surgery has a similar thing. You get that initial shot, little injection, a little tuck. That created you had an improvement. Mm-hmm. But you know what happens with too much of that stuff? You can then see them on the road. Their duck lips, their pulled face. The woman, the patient in this case, looks at the mirror and sees the wrinkle. Just the wrinkle. Doesn't see the hole. If I ask, one of the things I do with my patients, especially the aesthetic ones, the pure aesthetic ones, like I said, everything involves aesthetics and plastic surgery, but I say to them, okay, right now, tell me, you've been with your husband 10, 20, 30 years. What are the differences between the right side and left side of his face?
What do they say?
They can point to a big mole or a scar, but they can't see, they don't notice that the one eye is just a hair above the other, the eyebrow is a little different curve from the other side, the ear is a little lower set and back, the smile has a little asymmetry, the nasolabial fold is a little bit different. None of that. Why? Because we see the whole in a context. When there's harmony in relationships, we see the whole. We don't focus. I have to have something gross that draws my attention. Well, when you're looking in the mirror is a bad counselor. The mirror takes out the context and then focuses. So the woman sees the wrinkle, but she doesn't see that her face is being puffed out from multiple injections to get rid of that wrinkle.
I think it's important. It's like not seeing the forest for the trees.
That's correct.
Classic.
Not seeing the forest for the trees. Missing the big picture. Well, that means my problems become bigger and bigger. That's what leads to neuroses and psychoses. I'm just a unit alone. But that's what power wants, right? If we're equal, then power is not in one spot, right?
Yeah. Do you think other countries do that? Because a country that comes into mind is Sweden. They have this concept of lagom, or they don't really emphasize one person being better than the next. They're all equal. Like they typically don't like if someone, well, American, but if someone is like, oh, I'm better than you or something else, they really don't like that. Do you think it's related to similar reasons?
No. I think in Scandinavian cultures, and I'm not an authority on Scandinavian cultures, but my limited experience of people from Sweden or especially in Denmark is that they're driven by guilt.
Oh, interesting.
because they're Western cultures. So the Western culture is driven by guilt. Okay, this whole law thing, as I mentioned earlier. Look, let's for a moment, just give me a moment. I want to express to you the three essential pillars of religion.
That's
All right, because guilt is crucial, because guilt is what drives a lot of human life, and it's a negative energy. So we need to understand how it works. The essence of religion, or one of the pillars of religion, is a source of power, authority, right? That produces an ethic. Then you have the people who, because they can't meet always the ethic that power, that authority produces, are riddled with guilt, have guilt and shame, etc. And then there's a priesthood that mediates the two. That's the essential structure of religion. All right. In previous religions, there was the power, the source of power was transcendent, and it was interpreted by the Caesar, Pharaoh, the emperor, who was God. Right? The coin, the denarius that people gave Jesus said, Caesar, son of God.
He didn't like that.
Right. So in a secular world, the source is the state. The state directly. It's mediated by a politburo, a committee, a bunch of authorities, self-appointed authorities. They come up with an ethic. But since there isn't no afterlife, is not the ultimate goal, it's this life. Well, this life means health becomes the primary. Appearance, health becomes the primary goal, right?
Why do you think it's all set up that way?
Has to do with our human nature and what we would call the fall in Christian tradition.
I didn't know that. Let's move on. I want to get through some more of these questions. We're having such a great conversation. What's a deeper reason most people get plastic surgery but don't admit out loud?
Their fear of death. I mean, it touches on what I said earlier about unwillingness or incapacity to love, to be oriented to the person. That orientation to self is a fruit of the fear of death, our bondage to death. That's what our fear of death is at the root of all of our fears. What would I fear if I wasn't going to die?
Yeah.
Right? Is there any reason for fear if you're not going to die? No. So, and that's what Jesus gets to the root of that, right? This is the problem, fellas.
Well, if you don't fear death, then it makes sense, because if I'm following the way of thinking that you're saying, do you mean that, so say my face is starting to get wrinkles. I'm getting older. If I can fix the wrinkles, the one actually I'm trying to fix that fear of death that I have because I'm aging.
Putting lipstick on a pig is what we would say crassly.
Okay.
Okay?
Gotcha.
Now, that does not in any way mean, because we're not moralists, that I won't do your facelift, I won't fix your nose, I won't do your eyelids. But there's a way one must handle the patient so that at least they kind of honor this with gratitude. You know, as a coach, every psychologist and psychiatrist can tell you that gratitude is crucial to a life of happiness and joy.
Yeah.
People who have no gratitude are arrogant. Their life is problematic.
Well, when you experience gratitude, you can't experience fear. I think it's a key crucial thing to know about gratitude.
Yeah,
It's impossible.
It doesn't wipe out fear.
No.
Not at all.
No.
But gratitude is a significant step to helping you. Perhaps, look, I'll do your facelift. We've spent quite a while discussing, trying to help you understand some of the things that motivate you, which are problematic. You have to deal with these. If you still insist for me to do something, okay, I'll do it. But at the very least, the humility of gratitude that you were born in an age and a time and a place where you could do this, because what you want is not foreign to what someone wanted 2,000, what any woman would have wanted 2,000 and 3,000 years ago,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So the key is what motivates the physician, which means I have to give time to this patient. I could be with a patient for an hour, 2 hours. I got a line waiting outside. They're getting irritated. But then when they come, they'll get the same.
They want the same thing. Yeah.
They get the same thing. So,
yeah. Have you ever told a patient no before, and why?
it's very, very rare. I mean, if there was clear, serious psychoses, I had a patient who was clearly psychotic who was threatening me to kill me if I didn't do something for them. So, I mean, obviously, and think about it. Would you recommend a liposuction to a woman with anorexia nervosa who's skin and bones?
No.
No, I wouldn't do a liposuction to a kid with anorexia nervosa.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Right. So that's very rare. In most of my aesthetic patients, the patients that come purely for aesthetic things, there's at least a break. They want to reevaluate things, think about things once more, maybe delay something. Because here's another thing that I think a lot of physicians are short on. If someone who's 35 coming to me for something already at 35, they're going to want something again at 38, at 40.
What's the most common surgery that people want to get when it comes to plastic surgery?
Well, again, plastic surgery is a very broad field. I assume you mean aesthetic, the aesthetic aspect of it.
Yes.
Because right at this stage of my life, most of what I do is children. It's mostly clefts, craniofacial stuff. In the world of aesthetics, it's a broad mix of things from the various liposuctions, body contouring, breast, face. I mean, there isn't any one thing that I see as predominant, at least wasn't in my practice when I was doing much more aesthetic stuff.
Okay. I was just curious. I didn't know if there was like a trend more than anything.
You'd have to see the broad statistics, because one plastic surgeon focuses on body contouring, liposuctions, another on facelifts, another on noses, another on eyes. So by asking individual docs, you won't get necessarily the broad picture. You have to look at statistics.
Has social media made people more confident or more insecure?
So technology in general is coincident with the narcissism of our age. It has not added to confidence. It gives temporarily, like money, the illusion of confidence. Like money gives us the illusion of wealth. Remember, money is a conditional liability. It's a piece of paper that you're trusting whoever puts it out isn't going to take it to zero, either by inflating it away or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, I think the same applies to your...
Oh, to what you're saying, yeah. How do you know if someone has true confidence?
For confidence to be real, it can't be based on yourself. That is, there has to be a source outside of you, because you see your dark side if you have any self-awareness. So your confidence has to come from a source outside of you upon which you can base your confidence. So when I know that I'm an image of God, a God who so loved me that he gave his only begotten Son for me, that's profoundly confidence building. When I know that in baptism, chrismation, and in taking weekly, regularly his body and his blood, I am being transfigured. His life is increasingly growing inside of me, and my mind becomes his mind, and his mind becomes my mind, his capital H. Then I'm consistently living, manifesting the signs and symptoms of love, which is a sacrificial way of life. Then I can grow in confidence.
Got it. What's one beauty standard you think has gone too far?
Well, first of all, what's gone too far is that there is no beauty standard anymore.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, there's no serious... Beauty was always tied to goodness and truth. You can't disconnect beauty from goodness and truth. What you have then is a shallow, pathetic facsimile or illusion of beauty. Okay? Which changes with fashion. One day it's this, another day it's that. Or 1 month it's this, 1 month it's that. And you can see what happens to that. as it degenerates, as the reality of time presses on, that veneer is gone. But beauty is timeless.
Yeah.
Beauty is that inner joy and love that comes, they can see in the eyes of my grandmother.
Yeah, it's not about what clothes she's wearing.
Yeah, so beauty, there's no standard anymore of beauty. It's perverse right now. It's perverse and ephemeral.
Not good, that's for sure. Why do you think beauty and power are so tied together in modern culture?
Excellent question. Well, given what beauty has degenerated to, power is intimately tied to that. Okay? How is that? It's the way of narcissism. First of all, we have a money system that generates narcissism, because a debt-based money system is a system that produces tremendous inequality of wealth and power grades. That power produces narcissism. And a society that's oriented this way, the entire Western edifice or concept of divinity really has as its God a narcissistic God. Remember, Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas says that because God is perfect, he cannot move out of himself. Contrary to what the church believed for 1,000 years, that God moved out of himself. God, St. Athanasius says, became man so that man can become God. Thomas Aquinas says, no, God is perfect. He can't move out of himself. Therefore, he loves you inside himself, in his mind. Well, that's what we said a minute ago was a source of narcissism.
Correct.
So this model of divinity is a crucial source of a culture of narcissism. Then Aquinas does one more thing. The church for 1,000 years rejected interest-bearing money. Aristotle, prior to Christ, understood that interest-bearing money system is a system that destroys democracy, creates oligarchy, because the nature of interest is to concentrate. And St. Basil the Great continues that tradition and goes a step further. He says in his 3 talks on interest-bearing money, St. Basil says, the Lord has placed limits in time and space on all things. A rose will grow this much, a lion this much, a human this much, an ant this much in time and space. Only one thing has no limits in time and space, and that's interest-bearing money. That's why it's diabolical. And remember, diabolical, the word means divisive. Diabolos, devil, comes from the Greek word that means division, to separate, to disintegrate. So right away, you know, just from the language, that what divides and separates, disintegrates, is evil. What unites is good.
So it seems like with all this dividing we have, especially you think about in America, the devil's at work.
Of course. Of course, we've given ourselves over to him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, another thing I think is we're just so distracted these days too. You know, people can't focus on anything.
Yeah, so distraction is an internal disintegration where I can't come into communion with myself. See, so we're disintegrated at every level because disintegration, there's a war inside of me. All disintegration is forms of violence, right? So there's a war inside of me. I'm disintegrated. I have no self-knowledge or limited self-awareness and knowledge. Well, that inevitably pits me against you. And no amount of sentiment will overcome that. That's why relationships break down, right? If we could overcome that, then we're moving past sentiment. But no amount of sentiment will overcome the internal war that's inside of me. It will affect, like you said earlier, my relationships with everything around me and everyone around me.
Yeah. Something that's been a game changer for me is I'll journal, I'll radically prioritize things I need to do. Like every day I prioritize one thing I want to get done. Do you think that people listening to this could benefit from making a journal to help with that? That if I sent them a copy of it, that they would benefit from that?
Benefit from you sending them a copy of your Personal?
Not bipersonal. A journal they can use themselves to help them focus.
Oh, sure. Anything. I think that's important. Anything that can help us to focus is helping some other person, our one fellow man, to get his life together.
Yeah.
You know, there are different. It's not. We have to think. I can have in front of me a million choices, of which one can give me a 2% interest in terms of benefits, and all the way to the other end, 100-fold benefit. All of those are good choices. Okay, so one guide can help me a little bit. Well, maybe there's another guide who is older, wiser, has a different perspective, and can help me more. But both are good. Both add something. Both help. Both lead someone, take him one step a little further to helping him get out of his dark spot.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you want a preview of the journal I'm making, go to my Instagram, follow me at Jake Paul Turner, and DM me the word focus and podcast, and I will send you a preview of the journal. How much of your job feels like being a therapist rather than a surgeon?
Okay, so again, if we don't reduce surgery to simply a technique, but if the surgeon really is a physician who has the whole of his patient and inducts the patient's problem into his broader life, it's not that he's going to be the spiritual father of that and cure everything of that patient, but at least helps him to see the problem in a bigger picture.
I think it's much harder to discipline someone you love as well, too.
Definitely. That's why we're not raising our kids right. We're confusing freedom with license. But freedom cannot occur without responsibility. And freedom cannot happen if you don't have self-knowledge and self-control. You're not free. You're a slave to your passions and your impulses. That's what an animal is. But the powers that be are reducing it to that. They're promoting that image of man. It justifies for them then their control, and they're treating us like animals.
Yeah, you'll hear that. People will say, we're just animals. No, we're human. We're much different.
Well, we are a type of animal in a certain way in that we're animated.
True.
But
I'm pretty animated sometimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't end there.
No.
It doesn't end there, right?
Yeah.
It does not end there.
No.
There's something unique about the human person.
How do you handle the stress from giving a patient bad news? I'm sure you've had to give patients bad news before.
Yeah, so especially with diagnoses with cancer, this sort of thing. Look, that's a very important question because that requires a lot of self. Okay, so self-knowledge, self-awareness by itself produces a modicum of humility. In other words, you know you have limits. And it's very important for a physician to know his limits and to know the limits of the science he supposedly uses to serve his patients. So that difficulty is painful. It's painful for me to have to say something like this, but at the same time, that opens up the conversation to, well, is there just this life?
Yeah.
Maybe this is an opportunity to reevaluate some things. I remember one patient, why did God let this happen to me? I've been a good person. I've done this and that and the other thing. I said, first of all, if you believe that God let it happen, then he must have very good reasons, and it's your responsibility to maybe explore them. In a reductive world, in a cause effect, immediate, only what I can measure and see, we don't think that, 30 years, the spiritual laws are different than material laws. If I'm running and run into a wall, I'm going to experience the immediate consequences of my foolish action. But a spiritual law works differently in the spiritual realm.
I think it depends how we react to things, too, in the moment. Because, sometimes something that happens to us at the moment is really bad, but then later on it can be a blessing.
Of course.
Have you ever heard the story of the delivery driver?
Remind me.
Okay. So, basically there's a delivery driver. He's working long hours for his family to provide for them. And one day, his company shuts down without warning. Everybody comes to him and says, "That's terrible." And he says, "Maybe." And a week later, he found work driving for a new app. And he's making a bunch of money, he can set his own hours. And people are like, "Wow, what a blessing." And he says, "Maybe." Next week, he gets in a terrible car wreck. His car's totaled. He can't work for a month. Everyone said, "That's awful." And he said, "Maybe." Well, during that month, he was able to spend a lot more time with his daughter. And they'd walk to school. And they laughed and talked. And first time in years, he felt peace. And then when the insurance check came from his claim, he's able to buy a big van and start his own business. And everyone said, "Wow, you're the luckiest man on earth." And he said, "Maybe." The point of the story is sometimes you lose the route you planned to finally end up where you're supposed to be. And oftentimes, when you're in the thick of it, something really bad happens to you. Could be a blessing, but only time can tell.
It's a great story. I've heard it said differently, but the story is great. Look, I would give you another perspective of that story. In this life, we either go through as apostles or victims. As apostles means I sees everything as an opportunity. There's no good or bad. It is what it is. Why? Because I don't live for myself. Because I love, I'm not living for myself anyway. I'm dead to self, as Paul says. I live for others. So everything is an opportunity to bear witness to something. Or I go through life as a victim. If I don't have that perspective, everything is a bummer. So we have, for example, we have Saint Thecla in our church. Is a woman who was beaten daily by her husband. Okay? She stayed in that marriage because she said, I want to go to heaven with him. She was there as an apostle. Now, a lot of women are beat by their husbands that stay in their marriage. They're not saints. They're not saints because they stayed as victims. It would have been more honorable from a Christian perspective even, leave. Don't stay there as a victim. Because that comes out in many ways. That creates just a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Okay? So where the heart is and what your orientation is impacts everything. And the results, the motivations are significant. See, that's why we don't judge the surface of things. Yeah. A Christian person must see beyond the surface of things. Not the rules and the laws. A thief on the cross is the first person in heaven. So we have to be able to see beyond the surface of things. That requires vigilance, requires self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-control.
Yeah, I agree. What's something about the plastic surgery industry that bothers you ethically?
I don't know if I'd frame it that way, but again, as I mentioned, it participates in the whole business model of symptom management. It doesn't see the person as a whole and doesn't understand that in the long run it does damage. It's like monoculture farming, right? Monoculture farming disintegrates the ecosystem to one thing, which means I have to spend all day as a farmer thinking about what I'm going to poison because the ecosystem doesn't work that way. The only way I can have just corn here is by constantly poisoning the earth. Well, that comes back to poisoning the food that I'm eating, and that's tied to what Dr. Robert Lustig says, 70% of Americans suffer from chronic metabolic disease. The primary source is the chronic daily poisoning, micro-poisoning from the atmosphere, from my water, but the biggest source is my food. Right? So in the same way, medicine may seem on the surface to satisfy me. Oh, I got a facelift, I look great. But the long run, the aggregate of the current practice ultimately is destructive.
Yeah.
It feeds vanity, it feeds rackets, financial rackets, and it's participating in the disintegration of a culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, can a child raise himself alone? A child is born, you throw him out there without guides.
Yeah, probably not very well.
Okay, that's true of all of us as in the aggregate as humans. Without being connected to our Creator, we're going to dysfunction.
Yeah.
It's that simple. You know, the Greek, in ancient Greek life, the Greek was profoundly religious. But it's the only subject he didn't write anything on. He wrote politics, he wrote math, he wrote chemistry, he wrote medicine, there's nothing the Greek didn't write about except religion. It's very interesting, because religion was a mystery. Couldn't be exhausted in the brain.
Is that why they didn't write about it?
Yeah. And yet the Greek was profoundly religious.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there's no text. Remember, in the church, how does text come about in the church?
I don't know.
Right? In the 1st century, 2nd century, there's no New Testament. 3rd century, how's the church existing without the New Testament? It wasn't. The church is about a relationship, not about law. Jesus bore witness to a way of life whose apostles continued and the saints after them continued. They were the guides that guided me into a way of life called Christianity, the way of life of the cross. By the way, what do you mean by that? A lot of Christians today think the cross was a one-time event. Jesus got on a cross and somehow that paid for my sins and now I can go my merry way. No, the cross is a way of life. The mystery of the cross permeates all our relationships. Either I crucify my desires and ego to allow us to move freely to each other, or I project them onto you and crucify you. You can't get away from the mystery of the cross. Okay? So I have to be inducted into a way of life that is love, that's sacrificial. So what happens? Let me simplify it even further. We have a common experience of motherhood. There's a community of us, we have a common experience of motherhood. And if we ask each one of us articulate something about that experience, you may articulate her kindness, and I may articulate her patience, and someone else her discipline, right? And we all agree on that. And someone suddenly comes into the community and says, no, motherhood is lacerating your baby every day. And we look at each other and say, we don't have such an experience of motherhood. And so somebody gifted among us writes a few things about motherhood. Not to exhaust motherhood and the experience of motherhood, which no amount of words can exhaust, but to set a boundary, a limit between what it is and what it isn't, based on our common experience. That's how texts come about in the church.
I see.
Right? So St. Basil writes because somebody introduced an understanding of the Trinity that results in an unfree way of life. That St. Basil had to step up and say, no, this is a danger to the community. This is not our experience of God.
What do you think most people get wrong about Jesus?
It's about everything. So, for me, Jesus is a political figure, not a religious figure.
How so?
Well, I explained to you the 3 basic pillars of religion, right?
Yes.
And the key pillar is law and guilt, and then a mediating priesthood. Well, Jesus is the end of that. Jesus is the end of all of that. Why do I say political figure? Well, what is politics about? What is the central question, political question? Well, it has nothing to do with Democrats and Republicans. Politics starts with one simple question: how shall we live together? And that's exactly what Jesus answered. There's no possibility of union and communion with you without an understanding of a sacrificial way of life.
Yeah.
We have to sacrifice. So he's a political figure. All human societies are built on a certain polarity, Jake. Individual desire, common impersonal law. In other words, each of us is the sum total of our desires. But so that we can get along, an impersonal law has to come and set a limit to my desires. Okay? Jesus, without getting into big discussions and analyzing monarchies and dictatorships and pharaohs and whatever, and without coming into direct conflict with the state, with the Caesar who thought he was God, simply flips the polarity. Common experience of love at our gathering at the Eucharist, to celebrate eating his body and blood. So right away, basic human needs are met. My need for food, my need for drink, my need for shelter, my need for community, right? In that worship. That becomes my personal law. That's what gets me out of the daily decay of self-love. See?
Yeah.
So, without any argument against Caesar, he undermines and pulls the rug out of every potential would-be, wannabe Caesar. Everyone who wants to be over you, subject you to some power, law, or authority. And remember, the first thing the Emperor Constantine did the first Christian emperor, the first thing he did was deify the emperorship. No, we're not God. That was, people don't realize that, they take it for granted. That was a revolution in political thinking at that time. Because every king, every Caesar, every pharaoh, every emperor was divinity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that was a huge step forward for human liberty.
Yeah.
That democratized life. It undermined structures of power heretofore to that point in history that were central to all civilization. And the implications of that alone is another discussion, how democracy didn't end in ancient Athens. Sparta was a democracy too, by the way. Democracy isn't a system. It simply means that you and I, the power in society rests with us, with all of us. Not with the powerful, not with the money, not with the system that keeps me from participating. Okay? So that, and you can see in how the church organized herself, it was along this Greek thirst for the absolute, for liberty. See, my Greek forefathers, as soon as they saw that Jesus, the church didn't have the religious trappings it has today. Okay? So, which confuses a lot of people. You have to be able to see through the institution that develops around this person.
Yeah. I think with the focus being on love too, you mentioned how Paul lives for others and doesn't live for himself. You know, at the path I'm on now, I feel like that's what I'm doing.
So think about Paul now. Very important.
Yeah.
Paul, if you read his letters, personally, not academically, but get personally into this man who's struggling, he's asked typical bourgeois ethical questions, right? So he begins his letter to the saints of Corinth, but then he exposes the people we call saints. He exposes their all kinds of wretchedness and perversion that exists among them, right? So he's desperately trying, when you read his letters, not to lay down a law, give a prescription, but he's trying to reframe their moralistic questions and problems in the context of love, to help them see things differently. Look at Jesus. The woman is caught in adultery. The law says stone her. Jesus doesn't get in between them to stop them. He doesn't sit there and say, oh, yes, that's what the law says. Oh, yeah, it says here, Deuteronomy what? Yeah, good. Yep. Yeah, that's what it is.
Pick the stone up.
Pick up the stone up, throw it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't take away their liberty either. This is the frightening thing, that humans can't stand with this God who respects more than anything our liberty. And its liberty is what manifests his image in us more than anything else. He stands to the side. And he says, okay, he was without sin, cast the first one. See, without violating their liberty, without giving them a prescription, a law, he appeals to their conscience. Think about when Jesus is asked, should we pay taxes to Caesar? A lot of Christians interpret that moralistically. Oh yeah, he says, sure, we should need to pay our taxes. A good Christian pays taxes. That's not what Jesus doesn't give prescriptions. What he's really asking is, does anything belong to Caesar? He's asked for the denarius. Oh, Son of God? Who's usurped my authority? A vile fantasy. A fantasy, an illusion. You're the Son of God? And money? We already said money is an illusion, a fantasy that comes from my head. Nothing belongs to Caesar. Throws the denarius back to them. He doesn't give a prescription. Oh yeah, pay your taxes. But we hate that responsibility. The mountain that he says faith will move is the mountain of responsibility. The responsibility that liberty takes, that freedom takes, freedom of conscience.
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably just can't handle that pressure.
They can't handle that. That's too much.
Yeah.
Very difficult for people. They want you to tell them what to do.
Yeah. I really liked your story we were talking about before the podcast, if you mind talking about it. How Jesus handled the two brothers that came to him arguing over inheritance. You mind telling that story?
Well, if I remember correctly, two brothers came to him, like he's a judge and a lawgiver, to resolve this problem. It was being unequally settled. And Jesus threw it back at them. He said, you deal with your own problems. I didn't come to solve your lack of love problems. Your problems are a result of greed and materialism, selfishness, pride. I didn't come to tweak your pseudo-civilizations. As a matter of fact, nothing will be left standing of this civilization.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So love and a sacrificial way of relating to the world produces something entirely different.
Yeah.
First of all, it takes us out of the vicious cycle of possessiveness. Remember, Jesus gives us a key to understand history and to interpret history. Two kingdoms are maturing in history. His kingdom, which is the virtuous cycle of self-offering, and the kingdom of mammon, the vicious cycle of possessiveness. Okay? Those are two keys to understand the movements of history. Right? Part of that, the kingdom of mammon, is money. Remember, money, digital money, is the first immaterial thing man has created on the way to self-deify. Because man's deepest impulse is to be as God. He was made to be God, but by grace, not by nature. And that's the whole source of Western science, technology, medicine, is man's attempt to recreate man. The West is obsessed with this. Is obsessed to recreate man in his image.
Well, and like you said, material things. I mean, any inheritance anyone's going to argue over in 2 generations, 100, 200 years, it's probably not even going to be yours anyway.
That's the tragic reality. When you look at wealth, the vast majority of that wealth is squandered by the second generation.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, as a father, who's making an above average income, in Greece. Suddenly, you're able to provide more stuff for yourself and your children.
Yeah.
Well, then you realize, wait a second, is it wise? Will I be doing something destructive to the kids?
Yeah.
To provide them more stuff, more things, to distract them in more ways? Well, then what's the point of making it?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need to make this much.
Yeah. It's not always wise. It's like giving a 16-year-old a Ferrari. They don't know how to drive yet. What you're going to do is probably sentence them to death.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a slower car that's beat up, least less chance of them dying when they're most likely going to wreck it. I mean, let's be honest. I've wrecked some of my cars. It's just as a teenager, you don't have experience yet. You get in a car accident. Oh, can't believe that happened. Well, you're
there's another good point you're making, and that is that handling wealth in the material world requires a certain spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like you said, you don't give a 2-year-old car keys, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place, right? So we have to be patient with these things and evaluate them. And evaluating means having a system of values, of course, having a point of reference that helps you. You have to understand human nature, etc. You have to be able to see each child individually, their gifts, their talents, their differences, their weaknesses. Yeah. You want to be careful that you don't pit one against the other.
Yeah.
Parents often will do that.
Yeah, picking favorites.
Yeah, pick favorites, pit the child against the other parent, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
You have to pick up on these things.
Yeah, it's all, I don't have kids yet, but I've experienced it in different areas.
In all relationships.
You see in different relationships, yeah.
Right. Right. You're a nurse anesthesiologist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that the development and evolution of nursing in this country has created friction among physicians.
Oh yeah.
To your doctor colleagues.
Yeah, of course.
This isn't politics. You referred to it earlier as politics. No, politics is a very good Greek word that's misused. What we really mean, these are passions.
Yeah.
These are the pride, the ego, the vanity, the lust, the this and that and the other thing that we, for some reason, we don't want to contemplate. We call it politics. But that's demeaning and misusing a very good word. And there's a reason, I believe, that there's lack of education in this. The people in control, powers that be, want you to identify politics with something dirty so you can withdraw from it. So you can withdraw from serious discussions, not between mafia groups, Democrats, Republicans, but serious political discussion.
Yeah, and I feel like oftentimes the difficult discussions we need to have in life, one, are inevitable, and two, usually the discussion we need to have.
And again, they have to involve metaphysics, whether we like it or not. A secular age wants to banish, it's so reductive, it wants to banish metaphysics. But you can't. Everything comes back to metaphysics. Everything.
Yeah.
That is, to go beyond the material world, right?
Yeah.
Beyond physics, nature.
Yeah, exactly.
An idea is metaphysics.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, that was central to Greek thinking anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I often say, I got phenomenal training in this country. Training, not education. Life educated me. Greece educated me. The Orthodox Church educated me. My parents educated me. You help educate me. But what the university, what Hopkins gave me, what the University of Pittsburgh gave me, was phenomenal training. But training and education are two different things. They may coincide, but they're not the same.
Yeah. What's the biggest difference?
Well, training is a technical thing, okay? To properly diagnose a patient, to do the treatment that you have, to operate excellently, to have that astute awareness, patient symptoms, this sort of thing, to follow in post-op. Education is very different. You can't say in this century that you're an educated person, having read Plato or Aristotle, the Bible, Kant, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is go to theater, music. You know, this educates you. This
Travel.
enriches literature. To read Shakespeare, how can you say you're educated and grow up in the West and not have read Shakespeare,
Yeah.
Hemingway, T.S. Eliot, all of these things? This is what educate you. These are the things that are diminished now. These are the departments that are closing in universities because everything is measured by the money it gives. But how can you measure culture and civilization?
I don't know. It amazes me. I'd like to actually, if there's a way to actually get the statistic to see how many people who read, how many people have actually read the entire Bible. It's probably pretty low, if I had to guess. Hopefully it's higher. But
Well, and then of course, with all of these, you need guides. It's not, when I studied chemistry, for example, at the university, that it wasn't the book that was the authority. It was the professor who wrote the book that's the authority.
true.
So in the scriptures, when I'm reading it, we say the Bible is a revelation. Well, in what sense? I'm not having the revelation. I'm reading about Moses who had the revelation of the burning bush that wasn't consumed. Many people today, because of our education, because of our schooling, which separates practice, life, from data, from information, many young people today, and people older now, confuse the data, the information in their head with revelation and reality. Without it connect to the experience, what you know just puffs you up.
Yeah.
So it's Peter who's having the revelation of the transfiguration of Jesus. He's the one that's sitting in the uncreated glory of God and seeing God, not me, who's reading about it. So, yeah, the Bible is a revelation, but not to me. I'm just reading it as a book. If I'm in the church and I'm reading it in the context of worship, that is, it's being read to me, and then there's a saint who interprets it through his life, then I am beginning to participate in the way of life. Think about it. Would you want a surgeon operating you who learned a surgery from a book?
Probably not. It's at least a YouTube video.
So here's, I love medicine because no metaphor exhausts the church, but think of the church as a hospital. In that hospital, in my experience, you have a huge spectrum of patients. You have the patient on the one hand who doesn't believe he's sick. He doesn't know why he's there. Someone brought them there, and they want to leave. And all the way on the other spectrum, you have that person who knows they're really sick, who understands the severity of their condition, and they are ready to submit to everything to get well. So you have this broad spectrum of patients. This church is the same way. You have this broad spectrum of people. A bunch of them are there. They don't know why they're there. They don't want to be there. Someone brought them there. They're making them come there, whatever.
Yeah.
All the way to those few people who they know why they're there and what they're doing there. They want to be cured of their sickness, of their selfish love. Yeah. But you have a whole spectrum of docs, too. The priesthood is a spectrum, too. You got quacks who don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what they're saying. They're pretentious. They're there for, it's a power trip for them, being priest or bishop and telling people what to do and binding people with guilt. All the way to the other end, which is our saints, who are the living witnesses of sacrifice and love. This is the reality in the church.
Yeah.
Okay? So in the same way, there's a reality of how we are inducted into a way of life. The coaching. Can you coach if you yourself, can a sick doctor make a patient well, so to speak? You have to have gone through coaching. You have to have an understanding of what coaching is, how you have to get from A to B.
Exactly.
You got to know all that to be a good coach.
Yeah, and I went through all that when I was trained. So I know. People tell me, oh, well, how do you know it works? Well, because
you went through it. You've experienced it. Exactly. A surgeon has to do the same thing. He's not reading a textbook to be a surgeon. He's under the guide of people who know how to operate. And he's under a bunch of them. And he knows that these guys know what they're doing more than these guys. I'm going to follow these guys.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who's listening, who's maybe on the fence? I don't know if I should get coaching from Jake. What would you say to them?
I would say that all of us need coaching in life. All of us need guides. And where we are, we need to seize an opportunity. Now, we have to have discernment. Not all Jakes and coaches are the same. Like, not all spiritual guides are the same. Not all doctors are the same. So there's a certain amount of vigilance and care that I have to be able to discern one coach from another. All right? So certainly, I would say seize the opportunity. Listen to your heart. If it's telling you Jake can give you something to move you one step further, then do it.
Couple more questions here.
I tell you something I would tell Jake. As a dad, I would advise Jake.
Yeah.
Love your patients. Love the people you quote. I don't know you call them patients. But your patients at your work and the people you coach. Mm-hmm. I pray for my patients. Not all, thousands of them, but the ones that are active. Okay? Every evening, by name, whoever's I just operated on, I'm about to operate on, I'm trying to make a decision on, think about, patient I'm going to see for discernment at least. So it's very important, I think, to not have yourself as the pinnacle of the whole process. Right? There are those who are going to be better guides than you.
Of course.
Okay? And then there's ultimately God himself, whose energies permeate the entire creation. And he works. He really works.
This may be a little bit different, but like something that, and even a testament to your wisdom that we could do on the podcast, is I think it is very wise and smart to pray for patients and others. So do you mind if I say like a quick prayer we could say for people watching this here?
No, say as you will, as the Lord leads you.
Yeah. God, I just want to say a quick prayer with me and Spiros now, and to anyone listening to this, patients we may take care of in the future, clients may have, anyone we come into contact with, that you be with them, be with us, and just give us grace. Let's always come to you, forgive us of our sins. Amen. We're almost done. A couple more questions. This is part of the episode called Rapid Fire Random Questions.
Okay.
Quick questions for fun.
I don't know if I can do quick answers.
Get to know you. Let's try.
I'll try. Let's see what I can do.
This podcast will go over usually 90 minutes, but like we're having such a good podcast. I like to talk too, so I can't really say. Greece or America? Which one feels more like home now?
I love both, but Greece right now.
What's your favorite Greek food?
Oh, lamb on a spit.
Yeah, sounds so good.
The Paschal, the Easter Paschal lamb. It's symbolic from many things.
I need to come visit you guys on Easter.
Oh, yeah.
What's a morning ritual before surgery?
Prayer, always.
Prayer.
Yeah.
What's one philosopher you'd most like to have dinner with?
St. Basil the Great.
What's the best lesson Greece taught you that America never did?
How to love.
What's harder, operating on a child or consoling their parent?
The parent is the more, the technical thing doesn't compare to the consoling
The
parent. And you're talking to someone who lost their first child.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
He's now praying for us.
Yeah.
We don't forget him. The kids know their brother is part of their lives, because in the Christian world, death doesn't separate us.
No.
Unlike, marriages in the West, where death does you part, not in the Orthodox world. Death does not part us. That's why we have a living relationship with saints.
If you had the chance to choose whether or not to go to medical school again and do it all over, would you?
It's hard for me to answer a question like that. It's a very speculative and theoretical sort of thing. So I don't know what I would do if I'd start over again. It would be dishonest for me to say. I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know. I love what I do. I love taking care of children, clefts, and all that. It's shaped me enormously. It's taught me, the parallel medicine is no metaphor exhausts the church, but the hospital and medicine so parallels the church when properly understood as that series of clinics and hospitals that are there to help to transform my selfish love to selfless love. Nothing magical happens when I proclaim some belief in Jesus. That's just the first step. Now I have to be transfigured. I have to become godlike, Jesus-like. And that's not just a few good works. That's a way of thinking, of being, an ethos that's oriented to the other. That's why Jesus is a political figure. He addresses a political question. How shall we live together? Jesus is the end of religion. He's the end of guilt. He's the end of law as having preeminence in my life. And that's liberating.
Yeah, it is very liberating.
So that what that means is that he came exactly because of my condition. So I don't have to pretend. I don't have to hide what I am. I don't have to compare myself to anybody. I'm truly free because I've been freed from the bondage of sin, death, and the devil, and all the guilt that produces. I'm a free man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very freeing, for sure. I don't think there's anything better than living for others. There's no end to it. That's from glory to glory. There's no end to love. A lot of people have this notion of heaven as this boring place we're going to sit around. No. Paul tells us God is infinite, so our growth in him will be infinite, eternal, and unending. In other words, love is not a created thing. Love is uncreated because God is love. That means there's no end to the joy and growth. It's what the Old Testament calls glory to, Paul calls glory to glory. It's what the fathers of the church referred to as deification or theosis. There's nothing boring about that. No, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. And with that same way of thinking, there's no end to the growth.
There's no end.
There's
That's
no
right.
end point of it. It's all growth.
And there's going to be those who are way ahead of me, and there are going to be those who are behind me, and we're all in this journey together. Some of us are struggling a little bit. It's okay. Some of us are struggling a lot. That's okay, as Paul tries to tell us. The stronger, the supposedly stronger, don't judge the weaker. So again, as I mentioned earlier, he's trying to get us out of a moralistic way of thinking. That's all. His whole struggle is trying to reframe things. He says, okay, you're free now. You can eat anything you want, because in the Jewish tradition, certain foods you're not allowed to eat. No, you're free to eat anything you want. But if for the sake of my brother, if I eat this, I scandalize him, I won't eat it again. So he's not trying to give you a prescription. He's trying to tell you how a Christian thinks freely. And if this is the limits of your faith, that's okay. That's it. We don't judge. Nobody judges. We're all on a path.
Yeah.
Today, you're strong. Tomorrow, You're weak.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you up. Something happens. You stumble.
Yeah. Yeah, we all stumble.
We all stumble,
We all
right?
stumble, for
we
sure.
have this icon of a ladder going up to heaven, and you'll see all these people going up to heaven, and there are people falling off of it along the way, and there are people who are near the top falling off of it. Right? So nothing's a given. We all struggle. We all at any time can be tripped up by the devil,
Yeah.
who's going around like a lion looking.
Yeah, or miss a step on the ladder.
Yeah, miss a step, and that's it. You slip. Something happens. A temptation you weren't prepared for. Boom.
Yeah. If you had a chance to go back and talk to your 9-year-old self, what would you say to him?
I'd probably give him a whack first.
Yeah. We all could use that at 9 years old. Yeah.
If I give him a whack first, and I would, at 9, at some point you don't say anything more. You just have to live. But I'd be pulling my ear and say, son, Jesus is the way, the truth, and life. Everything you're looking for is right there in this person who embodies and love, who manifests to us true love, not as a pile of sentiments, but as a sacrificial way of life that doesn't burn out or hide your personality, your character, whatever it is. You know, some people are more naturally quick to anger, some people are patient, all that. No, your personality is there, but he's going to bring out the best. You know, where he tells us, we're told to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I would explain this to my 9-year-old self. A lot of people interpret that as meaning to love your neighbor as you love yourself. But that's not correct. The Greek is agapa ton plisian os eaftos. That can mean love him as you love yourself, but it also means to love him as if he is yourself. That's crucial. Yourself exists in the other because it's in that movement to the other that you manifest yourself truly in the gifts and talents you've been given. Nothing is manifested when I close myself off in myself. My gifts, talents, abilities, knowledge are manifested in my movement to the other, free movement to the other. Not where I project my desires onto them and crucify them, but when I move freely them in that movement, because the word liberty in Greek, first of all, the word sin, the Greek word amartia, means missing the mark. The mark is love, and I keep missing it. That's why it's not something exhausted in a deed, in an external action. It could be giving money to the poor, but my motivations are wrong. The Lord sees the heart, not the action. The action is secondary. So the same thing, liberty, comes from the Greek word eleftheria, which the root is elefsis, which means arrival. So liberty is a movement. And the church ties the two together. It's that movement out of yourself, keeps you in bondage toward the other. So liberty and love are the opposite side of the same coin, and the rim of the coin is responsibility. Those three always bound together in one coin. That's what I would tell my 9-year-old self. As best as I could, I would hope to model it for him.
Yeah. He'd get it by the time he's 20. Final question. What's the one decision you've made that has made the biggest difference in your life?
Well, the quick and simple answer, so we don't take this forever, is Jesus.
It's finding him.
Yeah. He found me. He's realizing that he's been right there. I was baptized and chrismated into his life. But when we're baptized and chrismated, we're given potential. Nothing magical has happened. At some point, we have to take responsibility, make a conscious decision to make this a reality. And it was, I guess, that, I don't know if it was a moment or if it was a slow, for some people, they wake up at 5 and they watch the sun rise slowly. Some people wake up at 10, the sun's already up. It's a sudden thing. For me, it was a process. It was a process. My eyes started opening while it was still dark outside. So I don't know at what point it happened, but at some point in my heart, a little movement happened.
Well, I'm glad you can see the light. Well, thank you so much, Spiros.
Hey, God
Great
bless you.
podcast. That's so good. Yep. God bless you. Thank you for watching the Jake Turner Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and to follow me on all my other social media platforms. The links are in the description below.